and welcome to Pod and Long. I am your host, Ryan. It's great to have you with us. I'm here with my co-hosts, Drew and Megastar Mark. Welcome, gentlemen.
Sir, how you doing? How's everything going?
We are good. How are you, Drew?
I'm well. Mark, I would like to note, in the fantasy football draft that we just took part in, not an hour ago, Yahoo has given me a D+.
Oh,
let's check. Hold on. Let's see what I got here. I can do the
Hate
same
that.
thing.
D+.
A decent draft.
Yeah, you had a good draft. I have a D, so I'm slightly better than you. The Walla Wunderkinds got a D.
We are going to talk fantasy on this show in the second half. We are also going to talk about all the news that we have missed in the last couple weeks. And we've got our segments coming up at the end. But first, very important thing. Happy birthday, Mark.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I had a wonderful party. Both Drew and Ryan attended. We watched Ghostbusters. We gave away stickers. I was like 5 all over again. It was wonderful. So
it's a lot of fun, and I have a present for you still. Here we go.
Oh, jeez.
I'm 40.
I don't know if you heard
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. Wow. That's
That
my
hits
spirit animal.
That hit so different when I turned 40.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
We have that forever now.
That's a wonderful rant.
We have that forever now if we need to use that. All right. Last time on the show, we did our tier list of the NFL, our diddly pooers to our Super Bowl contenders. I feel really good about this list. If you guys still feel solid, rock solid on our list, the Rams are still really bothering you, aren't they?
No, they're not. I doubled down on it over the weekend to Drew. 100% 7 seed.
Okay.
We may or may not have had a lengthy discussion about the Rams that ended with Mark's unwavering opinion of his own correctness.
Okay. The Rams. It's going to be a big topic of conversation this year. Let's start with Trey Lance. Our good old buddy Trey Lance was finally first demoted to third string, then traded to the Cowboys for a 4th-round pick. So that means that the 49ers gave up how many picks to get this guy who started 4 games and only get a 4th-round pick back? Discuss.
There's multiple folds here.
Okay.
The stat of the century that I saw the other day was that between literally middle school and being drafted number 3 overall by the Niners, Trey Lance had thrown a total of 640 in-game passes.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
But the larger takeaway for me here is, one, if you're the Bucks, why didn't you get in on the Trey Lance sweepstakes?
Why not?
And two, and I said this to Mark over the weekend, our other friend Greg, who is a frequent topic of conversation on this podcast, like, Greg is a Nets fan, Brooklyn Nets, as Mark is. And I said, until recently, the most recent trade that any of our teams had performed that completely bagged the future of the franchise was that the Brooklyn Nets managed to turn Kevin Durant and James Harden and Kyrie Irving into a not playing Ben Simmons and maybe some cash.
Yeah.
Until friend of the show, Mike Kelly, Niners fan, his team now turned 3 first-round picks into a 4th-round pick.
Oh, my God.
So it's a shitty situation. It really is. And it's shitty for everybody. Like, the Niners did the only I was reading about it. There were 3 teams that even submitted picks. 2 of them were conditional 7th rounders.
Ooh,
and then the other one, because they wanted them to send him to the AFC. They didn't want to keep him in the NFC. But the NFC one, the Cowboys at least gave up a 4th rounder. I mean, that's a no-brainer. You send him there. He was going to be a distraction. You got to get him off the team. You did get something for it, but this stings. It does sting. I'm glad he's not going to be a distraction for the Niners, because I actually have very high hopes for the Niners, and I think they're going to do very well. And I feel more confident about that, knowing that he's not going to be a distraction in the locker room now. But it hurts. I mean, sometimes that's the NFL, baby. You never know. You swing for the fences on these quarterbacks. You got to do it, and sometimes this happens.
Polling the other intelligent gentleman in the room on what was clearly an awful day for North Dakota State University. How confident would you be if you were the Niners on the combination of last year's 7th-round rookie and Sam Darnold, who, if we know nothing else about him, we're certain of the fact that he has mono. But other than that, I'm not sure how much is known. Like, if you were the Niners, would you really go out with that on your shield? I'm not sure I would.
I feel extremely nervous about those two because I think Purdy is pretty good and doesn't have to do a lot. But the injury, I think that injury is a lot worse than people are. They're poo-pooing the injury a lot, I feel like.
It was whatever degree it was the most severe, and he is back for the season. I mean, at least early on. I mean, it is the only saving grace is he's not going to be really asked to throw a lot unless it's like the 5-yard out to Christian McCaffrey, so or Deebo Samuel. So I mean, I still think they win this division, but it is nerve-wracking. And I'd love this to be the situation when Purdy goes. Not that I want Purdy to go down, but if he does, this is like the Sam Darnold moment. He's back on the West Coast, and maybe this is where he turns him around. I do like him. I think he's a good guy. Not a good quarterback, but I think he's a good guy. I root for good guys in the NFL.
He's not a bad guy. He was my quarterback for a while, and he's just so frustrating. He's really not like he's more of like a practice quarterback. I feel like coaches love him because he can execute in practice. He's not an in-game guy. I've never seen him do anything in-game that I was like, whoa, there's something there.
What a backhanded compliment
That is so damning with faint praise.
It's not wrong though, right? Can you name a single throw he made in the last 4 years that you're like, that was a good throw? I can't.
You're great at quarterback other than the on the field thing.
He can practice.
Yeah, and you're a great leader and people like you. So,
He's like Ying Jan Lian or whatever from the NBA. Great against the chairs, but not in the game.
Love the chairman. Well done by you.
There's only one chairman I know, Drew.
Oh.
LaParca?
I miss him.
There it is, LaParca. That's exactly what it was.
I miss LaParca, which a brief tangent. Ask Mark. I did shockingly well trying to name all the members of the NWO.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you get like the shitty WWE guys who sort of went in there at the end?
Yes, he did.
The selection I take the most pride in was remembering fake Sting.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of little ones in there, like Dennis Rodman, that are hard to remember.
Yeah, Stevie Ray. He got the Duke
Ray,
of Thunder.
Yeah.
Okay. The Jeff Jarrett version of NWO is also hard to remember. That version. What was that? NWO 2000 or whatever?
Yeah, silver and black.
Terrible. I just want to show something here. Let me see if I can get this up.
Please don't be a dick pic. Please don't be a dick pic.
It's always a dick pic.
It's a dick pic.
This is what the Dolphins received via this Trey Lance trade.
Oh my God.
The Dolphins got Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, Channing Tindall, I don't know him, and a 5th-round pick.
Wow.
That is what they turned the capital from the Trey Lance deal into.
Yep.
Wow.
See also Walker, Herschel.
Yeah. I don't know.
From Dallas.
I still would have done it. You got to take a chance. You have to take a chance on these quarterbacks because then the off chance you score and you hit, you're set for the next 15 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Drew, but am I wrong on this? Didn't Trey Lance get recruited by Minnesota and they told him they didn't want him to be a quarterback? They wanted him to be like a safety or something?
Wow.
Yes. Or something else. You're not playing quarterback if you're coming here, and that's why he didn't go.
Yeah, and I mean, you get that sometimes with a lot of guys at small schools. Like, I've never been able to prove it, but I've often had the theory that because everybody's like, how did Miami and Florida and Florida State all whiff on Dante Culpepper? And it's like they probably all wanted him to play defensive end.
Yeah.
or tight end.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Right.
UCF was probably the only school that was going to let him throw.
Right, because who else do they have at the time?
Who else? Well, Blake Bortles, but who else have they had since?
Just got Bortled.
Oh, Bortles. Does this make Trey Lance a huge draft bust because of this? Not because of his ability that we haven't seen yet, but because of the trade assets and all that? Or
Way too early. If
Yeah.
he lights it up in Dallas, if Dak goes down again, or Dak just does what Dak does and doesn't come through in clutch moments, and they give him a shot and he does, he's way too young. We have no idea at this point.
With this is an awful idea for all involved, not least the reputation of this podcast and for myself personally. But I'm going to invoke the great philosopher Robert Kelly and suggest that we need some real talk. and I think asking.
So I took out my gun.
By the way, if you've never seen R. Kelly's Real Talk, it's one of the 5 greatest things on the internet. Anyway,
Amazing.
and bad things that happened before that, and plenty of awful, reprehensible stuff happened after that. But for that brief moment,
Yes, right.
anyway, in invoking Robert Kelly, I think that I don't know that the trade is what makes Lance a bust. I think that's asking the question in the wrong direction. I think Lance is
Okay.
a bust, and that necessitated the trade
Hmm.
because clearly, like, San Francisco is so far down the rabbit hole with Purdy and Darnold that they don't need Lance anymore. Which means, what do we not know about him?
Mm-hmm.
That he
fair.
he has not shown up for them at all between injuries and whatever else, that they are completely willing to cut bait with a guy who's still under 25 years old.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
our friend Mike, who, like we just mentioned him, big Niners fan, he was also at the party that was over the weekend, and I was chatting with him about this, and I brought up there was a picture that came out on the last preseason game for the Niners, and Darnold and Purdy are huddled up together looking at a tablet, and Lance is on the same bench, maybe 4 feet away from them with his headphones in, looking
seen
at
that.
nothing. And that's a little damning. That's
not great.
It's just bad optics.
But listen, we don't know. Maybe they were
Yeah.
playing Baldur's Gate 3 and he was watching
Right.
the game.
Right. Game's up there, Lance.
Maybe he was listening to Pod and Long.
He probably was.
He was excited for us to come back.
Very, very angry at us.
And he's going to be upset now.
He's not going to be happy with this one.
It's a good
Matters.
situation. It's a good situation for Trey Lance to be in now.
Yes,
It's like,
yes.
okay, I'm going to back up Dak. He's going to throw 30 interceptions. Eventually, I'll get a chance, and maybe I can show something. Not a lot of pressure on me. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a bad spot. Plus, I can throw to these. There's some good weapons on the team. Like, not that San Francisco didn't have those. I mean, they have amazing weapons, but
There's
it's not a
definitely gonna
bad spot.
there's definitely going to be games where he's down by 30, and it's Trey Lance time. So
Yeah.
They still have Raheem Mostert, right? Or did he go elsewhere?
for the Niners,
Niners.
I think he's gone. I want to
He
say
went
he's
to
a
Miami or
Dolphin.
whatever?
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to say he's
But
a Dolphin.
In any event, between Ayuk and McCaffrey and Debo, I still
And
maintain
Kittle.
and Kittle. I still maintain that, like, once a half, this team should run the triple option.
Yeah.
right.
Seriously. Like, with those dudes who are that dynamic at that many things, you're telling me you couldn't pick up 10 yards on a triple option? Come on.
Yeah. Wait till you're playing against Seattle, that old broken down defense.
Their
I mean,
linebackers
that's
cannot get to the edge.
right. I love me some Bobby Wagner, but he ain't going to the edge anymore.
No, he's not. Let's talk about Josh Jacobs. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs re-signed a 1-year deal to rejoin the Raiders because he really didn't have another option. So one more chance here with Josh Jacobs. Is this going to work? Like, is this one of those cases where it's like, oh, he's going to get hurt in like week 2 and this is going to be a disaster?
Doesn't matter. Like, this is
Okay.
the perfect show me contract for Josh
Mhm.
Jacobs.
Okay.
Because as a Raiders fan, like, I was dubious of his year last year because he'd been
Right.
above average to good his entire career and suddenly blew up the year that there was money on the line. So I say put all the money on the line again, and if he lives up to 12 mil, great. And if he doesn't, then you know what you've got.
Do you pay him if he has a decent season?
Me personally, I would give
Yes.
him another 1-year contract.
Ain't nothing wrong with that in running backs. It's
Although,
sucks,
listen-
but it's the way it is.
Listen, if he does it 2 years in a row, then maybe he's got something, and then maybe you offer him a 3-4 year deal and kind of see what happens from there. But
Right.
because at some point, like, you do have to pay the guy if he proves it to you in 2 consecutive years.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
you don't want to. That would show bad form if you didn't.
Right.
But
It's
for-
to other players who want to join
Right.
the team.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But for where the Raiders are right now today, this is the perfect deal for him.
If he does it again, I would reluctantly give him a 3-year deal with an out after 1, just in case this is all a money thing. So get yourself
Okay.
a way out of that. Very talented player. I'm glad he's back with the Raiders. I'm glad it's done. I'm glad it's over with. Everybody can move on now.
For now. Jonathan Taylor, nobody can move on from his
Nope.
story. Did he get in the fight with Irsay by the time we did the last podcast? I can't remember now. Got in a
Probably.
fight with the new Dan Snyder of the NFL, Jim Irsay, who was just
Jim Irsay,
snorting
yep.
coke under the radar for years. You see this guy over here?
This fucking guy.
I'm enamored with our principle that nature abhors a vacuum. So in the absence of Dan Snyder,
Right.
somebody had to slide in and fill that.
Has to be somebody. Anyway, he got in a fight with Jonathan Taylor about Taylor wants a new contract, and so the Colts decided to do the whole Lamar move where they're like,
Mhm.
go ahead, get a trade yourself, my guy, which
Yeah.
you will never be able to get because we will say no to everything.
I don't
So,
think it was that. I think it's like they probably could have gotten ample trade,
There
value.
were there were deals on the table, but I
Yeah.
don't think anybody was giving up what the Colts wanted, right?
I think the problem is you're going to have to sign him now, and what his contract demands are, they're insane. I mean, not insane. It's like he's a very talented running back, and he's so young. Out of everyone, he probably does deserve this contract. But we talked about in the last episode. This just isn't a running back contract heavy league anymore, and he probably went out there and they said, "Yeah, we'll give you a first rounder." He's like, "Oh, I want X amount of money," and they're like, "So yeah." Have fun. And I think that's what the Colts wanted. They wanted him to go out there and see that nobody's going to give him that
Yeah.
contract.
I agree. So now the deadline, quote unquote deadline, has passed for the Colts, and they have to keep him, according to. Although
Yeah, they
I guess
put
they
him
could trade him
on-
anytime, but he's on the
Yeah,
pup
but-
list.
They put him on the pup list, which means I don't think you can come off that even if you get traded. I think you're out for 4 games or whatever it is.
Is that what it is?
I think so. I don't think you get traded and then you're suddenly off the pup list. I don't know.
I don't know how that works.
I feel like if
I
you're
know.
if you're on it, then you're on it, and you have to be stuck there at least for X amount of time. But honestly, though, I mean, it gives you time to figure shit out. It's a good move by the
Yeah.
Colts, I guess.
We'll see how that plays out. I mean, an in-season trade at this point, those never work out really with running
Yeah.
backs in the first few weeks. So if he's out for 4 games and then he has to get used to the offense over 2 weeks, maybe he's not going to really affect the team unless
Yeah,
it's
I
the
mean-
second half of the year. But
The most likely scenario is he comes back after 4 games and meanders through a season and then demands a
Yeah.
trade again. So
Who was the last? And this is sort of a non sequitur that probably doesn't mean anything, but just as you draw trends, who was the last really good Colts running back that didn't ultimately end up unhappy with the team and being traded?
a die, maybe.
If he counts as notable,
No, I'm about to say, yeah, is he notable?
Edgerrin
Just
James
like-
was traded, right?
No, he was real.
yeah.
angry.
Ultimately, now that was after a while, but even so, ultimately his
Marshall
relationship
Faulk,
with the team faded.
also
Marshall Faulk was
angry.
traded. Like those are the 2 guys I thought of. Faulk and James
Mhm.
both traded. Now Taylor wants to be traded. Like
Mhm.
it's probably nothing. It's probably a coincidence, but at some point there's a trend there.
Mhm.
It is a little bizarre. Today was cut down day, cutting down to the 53-man rosters. Anybody cut that you thought was interesting? I didn't see too many on my list,
No. I mean,
but
Zappy got cut. That was kind of interesting.
that was the one that I wrote down.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
The Patriots Belichick seemed to want to play Zappy over Mac Jones
Yeah.
a little bit there, and then they don't have another quarterback.
Yeah, it's Mac Jones. That's it. That's the
It's
only
just-
quarterback they
It's like,
have.
what? Belichick is starting to get weird, like in senile over the last couple of years. Like, give me 2 defensive coordinators. They're going to coach the offense at the same time. I don't need 3 quarterbacks. I don't even need 2. Get out of here, Zappy.
he got real defensive too about like the offensive. Like they talked about how the Patriots arguably have the best offensive line in the AFC East, but even that is not good. And they were complaining. I guess the local media was complaining about how he's switching players around. Like how you're going to build continuity when you keep moving all these players around. It's typically the same five, but they're all over the line. And I think that's a good question. You got to have like be entrenched at a position. I think to build continuity with whoever's next to you. And he just went off about like, I've been doing this long enough. I know what I'm doing. And, it was just very defensive for Bill.
You didn't ask him about a punter in 1973.
Yeah, right.
Didn't you get the good answers when you asked him about that?
I hope he left.
You didn't ask him about Ivy League lacrosse.
That's what I'm about to say. I hope he left a spot open because it is cut down day. There's got to have been somebody who played lacrosse who was a white receiver. So.
Oh, they got plenty of lacrosse players on that team, I'm sure.
No, yeah.
Zappy gets cut. This one made me laugh. The Cardinals cut Colt McCoy.
Oh, I like Colt.
It made me laugh. I
talked about Colt on the way to New York City last night.
He gets cut.
Yeah.
Couple funny things about this. Number one is like you don't have a quarterback. Kyler's out for most of the year, we would think. And Colt was just is a decent backup in the NFL. He's done it a long time. Seems like he's been in the NFL forever. We joke about that all the time. Has he been in there 20 years?
Yeah.
But he's always confident. He's not great, but he can get the job done and lose some games, but be competitive. That's what you want, right?
Right.
Nope.
Keep you afloat for a game.
We're gonna play the rocket scientist Josh Dobbs or what?
Yeah, they are. I mean,
is on
real obvious this time.
What also made me laugh is Colt McCoy is doing some kind of podcast, with like a weekly podcast. It's like
we should have him on.
Yeah.
Should a quarterback in the NFL that starts be doing a weekly podcast?
Oh, I love that.
It seems like a waste of time. You might need to prepare and get ready for games, but okay. Now he has more time to podcast.
He's going to catch on somewhere.
No,
you're not gonna
right.
walk away from a guy who has that much experience in a league where he is better than most backups, I would say.
Conspiracy theories abound. Colt McCoy has had an interesting career ever since, depending on who you talk to, he and mostly his father pulled him out of the national championship game when he played for Texas, and some redshirt freshman got in there and just got smoked. And allegedly they did so to protect his NFL future, which he never really had.
No.
Except the comparison I made to Mark while we were driving was like, he's become sort of a low-rent Rick Meyer, right? Like,
yeah,
for a dude who was never anything, you look around and you're like, damn, he's still in the league.
Yeah.
He's a fascinating study.
He doesn't he doesn't do
like
anything that well. Yeah, seems like a nice guy, but he doesn't do anything that well.
No,
like, what is he still sticking around for?
If I'm Caleb Williams, I've already hired a real estate agent in the greater Phoenix area, because that seems that,
Yeah.
Unless Williams is suddenly and markedly passed by Drake May, which I don't think will happen over the course of the college football season, Williams is going to be the prohibitive favorite for the number one pick, and he's going to go to Arizona, and he just needs to get used to the idea.
Yep. I mean, they could, honestly, though, they could go into the draft with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Caleb Williams. I mean, they could walk away with that.
That would be pretty nice because of that Houston trade.
Pretty good building blocks.
God, Houston, what are you doing? Anyway, this one made me laugh. Ron Rivera. Let's talk about my guy, Riverboat Ron, my former coach. Not understanding that he could have played Sam Howell. What are you doing, Ron? He said, if I had known Sam Howell was this good, he would have played last year. I'm sure there's a Simpsons reference here that you could populate in here for me. He was on your team, Ron. You saw him practice every day. You drafted him.
Ron.
How did you not know?
Ron's
we don't even know. I mean, we don't know if Sam Howell is actually any good. He looked good in the preseason. People think he's going to be good. He's got to be better than Carson Wentz was. But what the fuck, Ron? What are you doing?
Easy to look good when no one's game planning for you. So,
just like there's like 3 or 4 quotes from Ron Rivera over the last 6 or 9 months that are just boggle the mind. It's like, I
Ron's
didn't know we couldn't get. I didn't know we were eliminated from the playoffs. Ron, you've been eliminated for 2 weeks. What are you talking about?
Has Ron Rivera crossed the line into Godfather 3 Michael Corleone?
Yes.
Like where there's still vestiges of the right person
Yeah.
in there, but it's
Yeah.
gone over the edge.
Yeah,
Hoo-ha!
that's a good way to talk.
Fredo!
That's a good way to describe old Ron.
Yeah, Ron's going to make some team very happy as a defensive coordinator next year.
yeah.
Let's put it that way.
And don't ignore the possibility he's going to make some university very
Yes,
happy as
right.
a defensive coordinator.
And
Yeah,
I think he'll be happier. There'll be less stress, less like he won't have to do these press conferences anymore. If he's a D coordinator,
he
yes,
doesn't
he
have
will.
to know things about his
Right.
team.
If he becomes like the coach of Akron, no one's really going to care.
Oh my
So
God, come on, Ron.
Ron Rivera, Maction.
Also, don't ignore the possibility that Ron is living in such euphoria that Dan Snyder is gone that he hasn't
Yeah.
recovered his mental faculties yet.
He just doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Kelly Stafford, not
Nobody's
Matt.
called me a racial slur in a week. I don't know what to do.
We're just holding the elevator for him.
Oh, poor Ron. Let's talk about Kelly Stafford, Matt Stafford's wife, who said on her podcast, because Kelly Stafford has one.
We should have her on ours.
Yeah, why not? Come on.
Everybody who has one, come on.
Come on. Her and Colton McCoy should do one together.
Yeah.
She said on the podcast, Matt Stafford can't connect with young receivers on the Rams. How are you picking the Rams still after hearing this?
He'll be fine. Don't worry
He
about
said that he well,
Cooper
she
Kupp ain't
said
young, baby.
she said that after practice they just sit on their phones and they don't talk about anything. There's no camaraderie or nothing between the quarterback and the receivers.
There's 2 interesting reflections I have here, which is one, she's unintentionally made a great like double layered comment here, which is what does she mean by can't connect? Like as in they don't talk to him, or as in his arm has fallen out of its socket and he
right.
can't throw the ball to them?
Mhm.
And number 2, this is the classic, like the older generation doesn't realize what's happening. There's a very good chance that the young receivers sitting around on their phones are texting each other about Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, or watching footage. Like, I mean, just because it's not on like a CRT monitor doesn't mean they're not like studying up on shit. This is very much old man's, in this case, old woman yells at cloud here.
Yeah, he's not even that old. He's younger than us. He's not like he's played in the NFL for years. Don't
Remember
you
that
know?
Super Bowl? Remember the Super Bowl parade where the person fell and he just walked away?
That was awful. That was truly
real
awful.
bad.
That was
real
bad.
All like 300 people showed up for that parade too, by the way.
300 Rams fans. Chris Jones, holdout. You think this is gonna affect the Chiefs, or doesn't matter?
Yeah.
Yes.
He's one of the best defensive players in the league.
Yeah, that's this close to a John Malkovich and Rounders pay that man his money. I won't attempt the accent, but you know the scene I'm talking about.
Yes.
Like, this is one of those dudes that you can't ignore. Like, you just got to back up the truck and make him sign on the dotted line. He's
And
that good.
one thing I think he does great is, people look at his stats, and he has obviously very good stats, but he is a chaos creator.
Mm-hmm.
He just blows through it up, and maybe he doesn't get to that quarterback, but he's throwing arms. He's trying to spin past people, and that allows the other guys to get through. He just creates havoc, and there's not a lot of guys in the NFL who can do that, and he is one of them. So
and
they'll get it done. They'll pay him, I'm sure, but
he was incredibly effective in the playoffs. Like he
Yeah.
caused a lot of problems in that Bengals game.
yes, he did.
Maybe didn't get all the sack credit, but he caused a lot of disruption, like you were saying, and and in the Super Bowl too. So,
You know what? I really do think that people. I think the Chiefs are waiting for the Burrow deal to get done, and then when that happens, they'll get Mahomes and they'll get him at that first year lower contract, lower cap space thing, and then they'll get Chris Jones. I think they're just waiting for Burrow to. I don't know.
So what you're suggesting, Mark, and I made the analogy a couple of weeks ago. So Mahomes finally will get Jaylen Brown money. This is where we're headed here.
Well deserved.
the Jaylen Brown money.
Yeah.
All right,
are we talking about Burrow? I want to talk about Burrow real quick.
Yeah, talk about him.
This
Talk
man
about him.
should not be near a football field at any point until that contract is signed. I don't care if he's coming back because I keep hearing it like he's going to start week 1. What the hell is his problem? Don't start week 1.
You don't
I'm not
need
saying
to.
that. Listen, I am a Bills fan. I understand why. I'm also like this adamant that he's not playing. Okay, but in the grand scheme of things, when that injury happened in training camp, if that was a torn ACL, he would never see that $100 million, $200 million ever in his life.
Yeah.
It would have been it. Like game changer. Tell him I'm not getting on the field until the contract's paid. You can't risk that, man. You can't.
Hopefully they can do it. They should. I mean, the interesting thing to me about it is the business aspect. I think they want to pay him, but it's the business aspect of how the Bengals make their money, and they don't.
It's Mike
They're
Brown
not made of
that's
oil.
The problem.
You know?
This would have been done already. This would have been done a week after Herbert signed if this was most other teams.
It's because they have to put whatever they sign him to, they have to put it in escrow so they can guarantee that he gets his money, and they don't have enough money to put in escrow.
Right.
That's the problem.
I'm going to take it back. So the American Basketball Association, I know, another Drew's basketball tangent, famously used to make great public headlines of the large contracts that they had signed their players to, greater than the NBA was signing at the time, most notably involving Julius Erving, and I think it was like a 10-year deal for $1 million, which in the early 70s or middle 70s was a big deal.
Pretty great too.
But what it really was he got like $50,000 a year per year of the contract, and then he got paid like $15,000 a year for the next 20 years, totaling up to $1 million. So yes, Joe Burrow is going to get a Bobby Bonilla deal. And,
he's going to own the Bengals. He's going to be an owner.
He's going to pull a Mario Lemieux. They're going to owe him so much money, he just discounts the price of the team.
Fuck it, I'll do it myself.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. We need a final preseason's over, right? There are no more games. We need a final team check-in from everybody. Let's start with the Bills. Let's start with you, Mark. How do you feel going into the season? Final team check-in on the Bills. You said higher than Super Bowl.
No. All right, for real here.
Okay.
The division is incredibly good. And the Bills are getting older. I think that is, especially on defense, that is a concern of mine. I am optimistic about James Cook, and I'm optimistic about Dalton Kincaid in this offense. I think both of those guys are exactly what they needed to emulate the Chiefs. And that's what they were looking to do. And Dorsey, I've said it for a long time on this, he wants to create that 2001 Miami Hurricanes offense. He wants his plotting running back, and he wants his fast running back, and he wants his 2 tight ends, and that's what he wants, how he wants to approach this. The rest of the AFC East is very good. I would not be surprised if the Bills make it in as a wild card and not division winner. With the Bills more so than anybody, it all depends on Josh Allen. If he steps foot on MetLife Field and that turf monster kills him in the first game, the season's done. But we'll see. I feel if injuries don't kill them, I feel like they're at least a playoff team. And we'll see where they go from there. I feel like they just need to get to the playoffs and then see what they do.
Okay. All right. What about you, Drew? You talked a little bit about the Raiders. Josh Jacobs is back. What do you got? How you feeling?
I am this close to being like, tell me again about the rabbits, George, and just looking the other way. I mean, Mark, Ryan, what does optimism feel like? I've long since forgotten.
Well, you're a Spurs fan, baby. Come on, you got optimism.
Yes, that's what it feels like.
Unless optimism is spelled Wembanyama, success feels a long way off. Did the Raiders look good in the preseason? Sure. Would I rather that than the alternative? Most certainly. I do find all of the Raiders blogs and various and sundry other articles that were like, Jimmy G looked great in limited action for the Raiders is like, well, cool. Now he's throwing 20% of his pass allotment for the year before he gets hurt. But, it's hard because that, the AFC West might be the most unpredictable division in football.
Agreed.
Because there's distinctly a timeline involved here where the Raiders could finish 7-10 or 6-11 and finish second.
Mm-hmm.
because the Broncos can't get out of their own way and the bottom completely falls out on the Chargers, which I don't think is impossible.
No.
So, they could well finish second in their division and still be out of the wild card race by Thanksgiving. But, so it's hard to be optimistic when there's not very many timelines in which the Raiders really come out ahead in the deal. But, they looked good in the preseason, and I would rather that than not.
Okay. All right. I was feeling Panthers fan here. If you didn't know, ballad of the 2023 Carolina Panthers. I was not feeling great after the first 2 preseason games. I watched every Bryce Young snap very carefully, and I was not happy with anything that happened.
What in particular weren't you happy with? Because
Number one,
is...
the offensive line looking absolutely awful, which that was a strength last year. That scares me. Ekwonu looking the worst, like he regressed at left tackle. That's not great. Receivers not getting open or hurt scared me. But finally, Bryce Young threw a touchdown pass in a game against the Super Bowl contending Lions. Who are going to get smoked on night 1, according to Greg. No, not according to Greg. Is that you, Mark?
That's me. I said 20 points or more.
20 plus. We'll talk about that maybe next week. But I wasn't feeling good. I was not feeling good. I'm like, this is not going well. This is not going well. And yes, go ahead.
I just want to interject. You mentioned Panthers receivers getting hurt in the preseason, and I had horrible flashbacks to Patrick Jeffers. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so I feel a little better, but I don't think this team is very good. I think they're worse than I thought they were going to be. I don't think they have a chance of getting close to a division contender. So
you talk about the AFC West being open, though. I mean, the NFC
it's
South
open.
is pretty
it's as
wide
open as it can get.
Yeah,
I just don't feel good about it. I'm starting to. I know preseason you shouldn't put too much stock into it, but straight up blocking, you shouldn't fuck that up in the preseason. You should be able to do that. If you're a top 5 pick at left tackle, you should be better. I don't know. I'm feeling a little nervous.
That could be rust, though. You do need time to work it through. That's why I think there is some merit to playing your starters in preseason,
which they did,
so they can kind of get used to this again. So
right.
Especially O-line.
Yeah.
I'm still on their bandwagon.
Okay.
I'm still on their bandwagon.
All right.
I think let's reconvene after 3 weeks.
After Atlanta, I'm gonna be. The ballad's gonna be back on, baby. All right, time for the fantasy chat. Talk some fantasy here. Let's start with the background on your league. You guys just drafted about an hour and a half ago. What's the background in your league? Is it standard, auction? What are we dealing with here?
This is a standard 10-team league, half PPR.
Okay.
Individual defensive players.
Ooh.
That's no fun. Team defense, which in some form or fashion is the successor to the league that my dad started that Mark and I joined when we were 16.
Yep.
Wow.
So we've both been in this league nearly 25 years now.
Wow.
I believe I've won the championship in this league twice, maybe 3 times, but twice that I know of, once of which because of Michael Turner.
Michael Turner.
Good old Michael Turner.
And it's a family league, but there's no crazy roster spots on this. The benches are probably 1 spot deeper than they should be. There's 5 bench spots. But it is in all other ways a standard half PPR.
Okay. All right. My league is now 16 years old.
Nice.
It is a 2-quarterback league, not Superflex. It is a 2-quarterback league, which is extremely difficult.
That's pretty zany.
It's extremely difficult to figure out when you should. There are no rankings that will help. Every year it's different. Many quarterbacks go way early. Like Derek Carr went probably 10 rounds earlier than he would in any other league. People are drafting like the 33rd best quarterback in the league. Like he's probably rostered right now. It's very competitive. Bragging rights. Friends all my friends from college/high school together. And several people have been kicked out over the years. There's been drama, trade. People have fought over trades. We've had all kinds of stuff. But yeah, and I had at one point I was so into fantasy. I had 5 leagues, I think I was in.
Wow.
5 leagues. I'm down all the way back just to this one. This is the only one that has lasted. So and I've never won. Never won. Never won. It's not easy to play 2 quarterbacks. It's really hard. Which
Drew,
I'll go into draft strategy. I put draft strategy on here.
Yeah.
My
real quick though, Drew, didn't you have an idea? Didn't you want to write a book about our first fantasy league?
Yes, our first fantasy league that went 16 years.
Yeah.
And by the end, it was 7 contiguous members for all 16 years.
Yeah. And we had a traveling trophy that got mailed.
We had a traveling trophy that was dedicated in honor of Ronnie James Dio. And everybody's name was involved, was on the plaque.
Mm-hmm.
We take it to Things Remembered or whatever, and have them engrave the name every year, and then mail it off to the next person.
Yeah.
It was the greatest fantasy football league in history. I dare say so myself. I kept as commissioner a complete prospectus of all statistics from the league for each year.
Yeah.
And then averaged out over a career.
Our first year, we had drama that we can't talk about on the air.
The first year, if the league went 16 years, I was only the commissioner for 15 of those years. The first year, we had a different commissioner, and scoring settings were strange, and things were said. And one member of the league, a prized member of the league, started off a message board post to the commissioner with the kind of thing that you could say in 2003 and you can't say now.
Oh.
And and then we sort of, much like Bender, we started our own league.
To be fair, though,
persisted.
Yeah, to be fair, originally he went against basically Commissioner 101, changing rules overnight, so different scorings would apply, and then hoping that you didn't notice.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's This is the thing that always gets me when I think about that league. The scoring and the rosters were so bonkers, single quarterback league, mind you, that the final score of the championship game, which Mark won as a wild card in the playoffs, and I think that's the only reason we even remember that year at all, because if the commissioner had won, we wouldn't talk about it anymore. The final score of that game was 351 to 297.
Right.
What?
It was insane.
What the hell?
And the thing is, it was so funny because when I won the night of. I won on the Monday Night Football game or whatever the last game was, maybe a Sunday Night Football game. And everybody in the league watched the score like a hawk to make sure that we didn't see any weird adjustment or changes in points or anything like that. So because at that point, everybody was paying attention to what was going on. So.
Damn, that is controversial.
It was an acrimonious beginning to a league that is filled with memory. And yes, at some point I may have to do the oral history of the league.
That would have been
that's awesome.
Would be very cool.
That's great. What is, before we get into more current fantasy stuff, what is your either best victory in fantasy that you remember or worst loss that you remember?
Oh, I lost the championship in the last game by like 1.5 points. And I dominated for most of that year. And somebody kind of like came up at the end. And I can't remember. I think we played each other in the last week and lost by 1.5 points on the overnight. And I bombed. I just gave it up. It was horrible.
The worst loss I can remember is not one loss, but a series of losses. And I'm not going to remember the year, but in this fantasy league that was so great that we were talking about, I led the league in scoring, and I led the league in scoring by no small margin. I had like 100 points on the team in second place, and I finished the season with a losing record. Because everybody I would play had their best game of the year against me.
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh my God.
Admittedly, it jaded me a little bit, like 5% towards the whole fantasy phenomenon.
My worst loss, and like I said, I've never won, which is a big bugs the crap out of me. It really bothers me, and everyone likes to rub it in. It was close to the end of the season. I forget which year. You'll probably know it from the game, but I was about to make the playoffs. If I had won this game, I would have been in the playoffs, I believe. Or maybe I was in the playoffs and it had a chance to move on. I can't remember exactly where the timeline falls because it was late in the season. It was Ravens, I think Browns on a Monday Night Football game, I think. And the Browns were kicking to win, I believe. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the Browns kick I would have won if the Browns had kicked it in. But it was blocked and returned for a touchdown by the Ravens.
Oh,
And I lost in one foul swoop. I lost because the kick was blocked and returned for a touchdoan
oh man!
in the same play to end the game. And that is how I was either eliminated from the playoffs or didn't make the playoffs. I forget exactly where it fell, but I remember being very upset. Like, they blocked it, but now they're returning for a touchdown. I want to say, like, the block wasn't enough to overcome the 3 would have, or a 40-yarder would have done it. Like, just enough to put me over, but the block wasn't enough, but the touchdown was enough. Out of the playoffs.
Oh, that sucks.
Brutal on a Monday night.
In our league, we did have one really good moment where somebody had the number. This is during the draft. Somebody had the number 1 overall pick, and it was the year Marshall Faulk came off of that insane year. Remember that one where he did it again. Remember, he did it 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
This would have been the second year in a row. Okay, that he would have done. Obviously unknown to us at the time. And I had the number 2 pick. The other guy had the number 1 pick. So I had whatever. I got to. I highlighted, I forgot like the top guy, Edgerrin James would have been up there and like Tiki Barber and, they would all have been up there. And number 1 shows up. And a lot of it, I think we drafted together. Is that right, Drew? Weren't we at like.
That year we didn't.
Oh, we didn't? Okay.
That was also
right.
the year that the thunderstorm was descending on our town and we were concerned we were going to lose power.
Right.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting at number 2 and number 1 comes up and, I'm like, but you notice, it starts and there's like a 2-minute clock. And we're like, even somebody in the chat, one of our other friends was just like, wow, how long does it take you to draft Marshall Faulk? Like, it's like, this is a very dead-on choice. And then I got to, like, 20 seconds, and Tiki Barber came up as the number 1 overall pick. And there was just silence in the chat. Nobody said a word, and then I think our friend just goes, what? And if you could have heard a girlish scream emanate from where I was drafting, It was that moment. I quickly took Marshall Faulk, and I did win the league that year because of that. So.
Right. Oh my God. All right. Leading into this year, do you have a draft strategy? You guys just did the draft. Do you have a draft strategy that you went through this season or not? Mine is super bonkers because I have 2 quarterbacks. So it was a very different strategy than most people. Do you got one? What were you trying to do this season?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't have one.
and Mark has won so many more fantasy championships than me, so I can't come down on him for that.
You just kind of wing it? Is that your strategy?
Best player available. Okay. I do go heavy. A lot of times we have individual defensive players. A lot of times forego drafting those guys and get more offensive players. And then, so I'll need to pick up 3 before the season starts, but at least I have time to kind of look at my roster and say, okay, which one do I want to keep? Which one do I want to get rid of? This gives me a little bit more time. I did that again this year. Running backs are after the first 3, it's tough. So I tend to lean a little bit more towards potential guys who maybe are like in their 2nd or 3rd year who had like good starts, and we'll see where they go in this 3rd year because running backs obviously take a little bit longer to develop than others. Unfortunately, I ended up with Dak Prescott, which is not where I wanted to go. It's not how this day should have started or should have ended for me. But Drew's brother took Josh Allen like a pick ahead of me. So.
Ooh, damn it!
I tend to lean heavy into the running backs because I feel like dependable running backs are the most scarce thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm always that guy who at the end of round 3 has 3 running backs and hasn't thought about any other position.
Smart.
But no, not really. Not based on the number of championships I've won. But the contrary to this last draft where I just took Jalen Hurts in round 3 because he sort of fell into my lap, I normally let me take you back to the heady days of 2007 where I won a fantasy championship with an unholy combination of young, hasn't put it together Phillip Rivers and aging John Kitna for the Lions as my fantasy
Wow.
quarterbacks, and won a championship rotating those two guys in and out
Wow.
because I had LaDainian Tomlinson and rookie Adrian Peterson and Torrey Holt and Chad Johnson and Fred Taylor and on and on and on.
Mhm.
Wow.
But as a result of that, I always wait on a quarterback, and based on my low success rate, I probably should do that a lot sooner.
Okay.
Man, at
Interesting.
that point, Phillip Rivers only had like 9 kids.
He's
And just one
doubled
bolo
since.
tie. Just one bolo
Yeah,
tie.
right.
I always because quarterbacks are so scarce in mine, I always have to make a priority to get a good starting quarterback. So this year I was the 3rd pick, and I was like, no matter what, I'm taking one of those 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah,
So I
right.
ended up with Josh Allen, which I feel good about. But then the picks that kept coming to me, I was just kind of taking skill positions, and I just let it go too far. So my number 2 quarterback is baby hands, Kenny Pickett, which is not good. I don't feel good about that at all.
I was just thinking you could do a 10-person league with 3 quarterbacks. I think that'd be kind of zany. I don't know. I think
It's zany as it is. This
Right.
is you because like if you don't get a starter in your like 3 starters, you're dead. Like you have
Yeah,
to
right.
play the wackiest people by the end of the season because like okay, this so and so's playing, I gotta play him. He's the only guy left.
Here
that
we
can
go,
happen.
Davis Mills. Here
Yeah,
we go.
right. Davis Mills was definitely rostered last year.
So I will say, sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead.
Not to get too far into a tangent, Mark and I were also part of a league that is a keeper league. Had that draft a few days ago, and that's
Okay.
a bizarre experience.
Yes, it is.
The whole keeper thing changes the dynamic of the draft entirely. It makes for less drama in its own way, and it makes rookies go higher than they probably normally would.
Yep.
But
I think
the whole
Bijan
dynamic
Robinson
is different.
Went like 2nd.
yeah,
Our
went
league
1 or
something.
2
Yeah,
overall, because I mean, not only because you can hold him for the remainder of his career if he's any good,
right. Mhm.
but
Mhm.
also because like a lot of the top guys are gone.
Yeah.
Right.
So everybody you care about has already rostered on a team somewhere. I will say I had fun making our commissioner mad because I took Taysom Hill as my tight end.
Yeah.
Because check your leagues, folks. He's listed as a tight end in a lot of leagues.
Yes,
now.
he is.
hmm
And nobody bothered to check except me. He was tight end number 9 in official scoring last year.
Wow. Wide receivers seem to be going very high this year. You guys both said that your running back take a lot of running backs at the top of the draft. Do you think this wide receiver thing is a real deal, where Jefferson is technically the number 1 pick in not weird 2 quarterback leagues? Chase is going in the 1st round.
Mhm.
I find this a little bizarre. Usually this may be 1 receiver towards the back end. Like Jefferson would be at like a 9 or a 10, maybe. I'm super surprised at how the rankings have fallen out.
I think for the worse, I think PPR changed everything.
It did. That's what I was about to say. Yep.
And it's personally, and I said, I just said I play in a half PPR league, and I hate PPR.
Mhm.
Because I hate the idea, especially full point. Like half point is almost tolerable, but I hate full point PPR because I hate the idea that a guy could catch a screen pass for -3 yards and that's still a positive play on the ledger.
Yeah.
Sure.
But the explosion in PPR means that like Justin Jefferson is worth more points than Christian McCaffrey or whomever else.
Right.
And so long as that's the case, I don't see an alteration coming.
Remember a couple years ago, Cole Beasley was one of the higher scoring fantasy players because he would get, he would get like 9 catches a game,
But
and
no
his yak
yards.
was like 0.3 yards.
Yes.
He just got it and fell over, and yet,
You know, I mean, what was that season that Mike Furry had 100 catches
Yeah.
for the Lions? Like,
Right.
if you were playing a PPR, Mike Furry was worth more points than like Eddie George. And I understand that fantasy isn't reality because of the way it values players or devalues players, but like, there's no
Right.
timeline on earth in which Mike Furry was more valuable to his team than Eddie George was to his team. You know,
That is frustrating. Travis Kelce, how do you feel about his fantasy stock? He's a great player,
Mm-hmm.
but in my draft, I want to say he went in like round 2 or 3. It was really early. I'm not a tight end guy. I usually take tight ends way at the end.
He's not really a tight end. He's like a moving
guess,
receiver. I
yeah.
mean, it's
but to your point, he just went in the first round in the draft we just had.
yeah,
Really?
right. Yeah.
At 8 or 9 towards the
Yeah.
end of the first round, but he went.
I
in the
had him
first round.
highlighted. I picked 9th, and I had him highlighted. I was going to take him in the first if he was there.
Okay.
And he wasn't, but so it must have
Okay.
been for me.
Interesting. All right, give me, before we get out of the fantasy, let's do one more thing, unless you have anything else. Give me one bust and one, I don't know, league winner or positive player that you're looking at this year. I don't know who wants to start. Drew, you start. Give me a bust. Give me a bust and a guy you think is going to be a guy you want to have.
My bust is not exactly going out on a limb, but I am not high on Keenan Allen.
Okay.
Because the number, like, he's great when he's healthy, but the number of games he plays is completely randomized every year.
Right.
So I tried to avoid Keenan Allen at just about all costs. League winner, I don't know about league winner, but like I said this to Mark, to me, the Patriots went out and got Zeke with the intent to use him. And given his talent and given their line, you know, I don't know that he's going to go like full Corey Dillon resurgence with the Patriots, but, you know, he scored 12 touchdowns last year playing like part-time. There's no reason he can't do that again, plus a little more for the Pats.
Right.
You know, it's already become clear based on Stevenson last year that like they don't consider Stevenson as a red zone guy.
Right.
He had like 4 rushing touchdowns total. So they picked up Zeke to be a hammer.
And he can still do that. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
You're not, if you're inside the 5, that's Zeke time. And if you're not inside the 5, keep him on the bench. But
Yeah. Right. Good point. Okay. All right. Mark, you got a bust?
Once again, I'm not breaking any ground here, but Mike Evans, Godwin, I think both of those guys are going to really crater out this year. I mean, how can they not? It's that offense is abysmal. I feel zero confidence in them. They're also getting older. Godwin's always hurt. So I'm staying away from both of those guys. Once again, I don't think he's going to win you any leagues, but I think a guy who's going to be top 10 scoring is Christian Kirk of the Jaguars. I think Trevor Lawrence on that team, I think he's going to take the next step. And I think Kirk, I was pissed I didn't get him in this latest draft we did. I just think he got that major contract and everyone was like down on him. He turned in a really solid year. He's in another year in the offense. He's got Evan Ingram there to take away some coverage against him. I like him a lot. I think he's going to do very well this year.
Do you think he's going to lose touches to Ridley?
I think Ridley's going to help him. I think Ridley's going to draw coverage away from him. So I said the same with Ingram. I think he put up all those numbers last year when he was the only option.
That's true.
So I think he's gonna do much better. And they have Etienne, who's I guess alive this year, which is good. So
okay. I have a bust. I have 2 busts, I guess. Super high pick Quentin Johnson on the Chargers, the receiver.
Oh yeah.
People seem to think he's going to be a big deal. He's not even, I don't even think he's in the starting group right now. He got picked pretty high and I don't think that even like training camp, they're like, this guy doesn't have it yet. So maybe he will get there, but he got picked awfully high in our draft, especially.
He's very physically talented, but he wasn't even like, he wasn't the best wide receiver in college football last year.
Right.
And he's super talented, and he's in a high-octane offense, but like that doesn't necessarily translate to success. We're all old enough to remember another Chargers guy, the year that everybody thought sight unseen Ryan Matthews was going to be a first-round pick, having never played in an NFL game. And, you know, he wasn't that good. And this is the same thing. Like, you know, in a keeper league, certainly take rookies high because what the hell, some of them will hit.
Yeah,
but in a standard redraft league, like, I'm always a little dubious of rookies.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, Drake London last year was considered to have a very successful first year, and it was still 800 yards. I mean, it's not like none of them are coming in, and I mean, rarely. Obviously, there are rare exceptions, but that's kind of the best you can hope for out of a high-end rookie. So, you know, most likely they're not winning leagues. I like Zay Flowers, by the way, from the Ravens. That has potential there.
That guy is that good.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
He's good. The two players that I think could help you more than you think. One of them is Dalvin Cook. I got that guy super late in my draft. Like, he's going to start. I don't understand. Maybe you guys feel differently, but I don't understand this storyline that, like, he's not good anymore. Like, maybe the Vikings didn't want to pay him, but he still got some juice. He was good last year. He's going to be in this high octane offense. The other guy's hurt. He's not going to play for a certain amount of time. I think Cook is way better than people think. He was a first-round pick last year.
I think the only thing that's going to his touches might be limited because they do want to get Breece Hall back in it. You know, because he is substantially younger. But no, he should be good. Dalvin should be very good.
They signed him, and they have the luxury of sitting Breece Hall or limiting him big time.
Right.
So I think he's interesting to me. And Odell Beckham, I got so late. Like, he was great when he got, you know, in that Super Bowl in that season, you know, with the Rams, and him and Lamar. It's worth a chance. Like, if he craps out, it's really not gonna hurt your team because he's so late in the draft. It's like, okay, whatever. He didn't do anything, but it's like a lottery ticket there. He could win you. He could win you a league.
Value at some point.
Right. Yeah. He's got so much value for how late he's going. I don't know if he actually will produce that, but it was towards the end. He's like one of my last bench players. Surprising. So we'll see what happens. I'm not good at fantasy, so I could be very wrong about these things. Anthony Richardson also maybe a bust. We've talked about how crappy he
maybe
how crappy him and the Colts will be. That might not work out.
I feel like I'm so negative about this. He's gonna like light it up.
Like, he might. Yeah, he might.
I feel like this is like such an obvious play, and it's gonna be the exact opposite because that's the way the NFL is.
It could be.
Plus, he listens to this podcast, so
he can write in the chat.
We found out a lot of different people listen to this podcast this week.
Can I write in the chat right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
This works.
Hey, Rich. Are you doing it? Uh-oh.
Oh, I see it.
Oh, that chat. A different chat.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. It's time for our segments to close this out. No broadcast.
Stuck on the screen now, Mark.
Is it?
It's in the private chat. I think only the three of us can see it. But still, now I can't look at you and not see that.
Time for our segments. No broadcasting moments. No sad boy boat. I don't think either this week. But we do have breaking news. Drew's unnamed college football segment has a name.
What?
It has a name.
The marketing department forced my hand.
What's the name?
The name is the Striped Spiral.
Okay.
Awesome. I love that.
That's great. All right. We had some games. We had some college football games.
We did have some games. Not a ton of stories, as most of the hot stove stuff, if you will, has settled down for the season. Continuing rumors that the ACC wants to pick up more teams and that they are getting momentum towards picking up more teams, whatever that means. Mm-hmm. Persistent rumor that they may actually be courting SMU,
really?
which SMU is an interesting one because SMU is one of those teams that a lot of leagues are interested in because of their connection to the Dallas market.
Yeah.
But it is also largely believed that SMU was one of those teams that, like, you could kind of go get when all the other dominoes had fallen. no, put your resources in trying to go get Stanford or USC or whatever, and then when the dust is settled, SMU will be there for the taking. So, like, if the ACC is truly pursuing SMU, then like one of two things is true: either the ACC believes that all the dominoes have fallen, and to a certain extent they have, because who else are you going to go get at this point, or it's and this is me making a terrible metaphor and a terrible pun at the same time. If the ACC is Florida State's sugar daddy, and Florida State is now making noise that it wants somebody with deeper pockets, the ACC is going to go out there and be like, well, I'll just buy you a Ferrari and show you how much money I have.
I treat you right, girl.
And this is where the pun comes in. The ACC has discovered that all the Ferraris are sold out, and so they are forced to buy a Mustang. I'll see myself out. But so we'll see if that goes anywhere. Just some more details on the whole Florida State situation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is unique to the ACC's contract with the Disney family of networks, or if this is the way all these contract works. But as part of the deal through 2036 that they have for their broadcast rights, Florida State and all the other schools in the ACC issued a grant of rights to the conference, which means essentially they kind of co-signed their broadcast rights over to the conference as a single body. So Florida State doesn't currently own the rights to their own games. So if they were to pay the Otto Porter contract to get out of the conference, they would then still have to take legal action against the conference to sue to get their grant of rights back. And the best legal scholars who pay attention to sports can't really come to a unified decision on how that court case would play out.
Okay.
And since university presidents are sort of risk averse on the whole for a variety of different reasons, especially university presidents at public universities, there seems to be some belief that if Florida State wants to leave prior to the end of that contract, they would have to negotiate that with the conference in some kind of agreed upon divorce. As far as other fun off the field stuff goes, Michigan, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the poster child for not being able to stop stepping on their own dick. They finally agreed. They and Jim Harbaugh and like the conference and the NCAA and like the Greater United Nations Security Council. Gonna be all right over there?
I would say you got Ryan pretty good.
You're hurting me with this. John steps on his own dick here.
They got together with the UN Security Council and the Federation of Planets and finally agreed on a 3-game self-imposed suspension for Jim Harbaugh.
Who are they playing during those games again?
One, nobody.
Yeah, right.
Two, hey, listen, one of those years, one of those teams was Appalachian State.
Yes, that's right.
And I have a whole thesis on that I won't get into now. But anyway, so they suspend Harbaugh for 3 games. Harbaugh then deflects on the suspension by arriving at his press conference and talking about how he believes there should be a revenue sharing system with players, which I'm sure the university and the conference and the NCAA all loved. And it's this Michigan is a talented but troubled soul at this point in their football life. And that was kind of all the fun off the field stuff in the past couple of weeks. Arizona State self-imposed a 1-year bowl ban. There's 6 people who care about that.
Herm being one of them.
One of whom might be Jake Plummer.
Yeah.
The snake.
But the only good story that came out of the on the field stuff this past weekend, because Navy got publicly flogged by Notre Dame over in Ireland.
Yeah, right.
In a game, hey, great for Sam Hartman. He transfers out of Wake Forest, ends up in Notre Dame. Now he's going to throw 4 touchdowns and he's leading Notre Dame and blah 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 blah. Notre Dame. But if you watched the UMass New Mexico State game, which I watched a large chunk of it because I am a loser. UMass has a transfer quarterback named Tyson Pumachan, and who looked fantastic against New Mexico State, and good for this kid, because if you follow Tyson Pumachan, he was originally recruited by Clemson. He was the backup to, I think he was maybe a freshman Lawrence's last year there.
Okay.
And I don't know that he was ever the heir apparent, but he was athletic enough and talented enough that he was recruited by Clemson. But he couldn't get on the field at Clemson, so he transferred to Georgia Tech. And he couldn't get on the field at Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech's quarterback wasn't anybody of particular note. But because of the offense that their prior coach, Jeff Collins, now fired, I don't know where he ended up, wanted to run, he didn't feel like Phommachanh was a good fit for his offense. And so Phommachanh didn't get any play at Georgia Tech until he got spot duty late in the year after they'd fired Collins and replaced him with interim coach Brent Key. And he looked really, really good in spot duty. But now he's taking, I don't know if it's an extra year of eligibility or if he's a grad transfer or what, but now he's found himself at UMass where he's the unquestioned starter, and he looked really good against New Mexico State. Is he going to go to the pros? I don't know. Probably not. But like, this is a Clemson caliber guy who is finally getting his chance to run at UMass, and good for him.
That is awesome.
And that's pretty much the stories of the past couple of weeks. You know, week 1 begins in earnest. There's a tremendous matchup Monday night between LSU and Florida State. Both teams that are kind of have to show everybody if they're really worth being ranked 5 and 8 respectively. That's easily the biggest matchup of week 1, and off we go.
Did Notre Dame, is this the first time they've done the Ireland thing, or are they over there every year?
No, they do that every year.
Okay.
And it's, or at least every year for the past 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
And it's a rotating opponent. It's not always Navy. It's been Boston College. It's usually a team with some kind of connection to like Irish heritage. So like
Sure.
Boston College or Northwestern,
Yeah.
or it's like, you know, a school with a strong Catholic affinity or whatever, but it's not always Navy.
Oh, they should bring BYU over. They could be the heels. That'll be great.
Listen, there's a reason that the BYU Utah rivalry is referred to as the Holy War.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Mormons.
All right, that's the first official,
Yes.
the Stripe Spiral. First
Stripe
official
Spiral.
one. We're in. All right, Mark, time for a FUBAR, football FUBAR. We have one inductee this season who's going to be number 2.
So this has already been spoiled for Drew, but and I kind of spoiled it last week because I teased it enough. And you know what? Pop your shirts off, guys. Get those cryo machines ready because we're going to induct Antonio Brown today.
Oh, that's right.
But we're not going to induct his entire career. This is a long season, baby. I need other football FUBAR entries. So what I'm going to induct today, I mean, I could go on and on. I could talk about his when he was throwing furniture out a window. Remember that? I could talk about the criminal mischief. I could talk about exposing himself in hotel pools. I could talk about his Instagram account. But no, today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts. We're going to talk about Antonio Brown buying and destroying the Albany Empire. So for first-time listeners to Pod and Long, all 3 of us have connections to the capital region of upstate New York. The Albany has had, let's call it, mixed results when it comes to minor league teams. They had a bunch of arena teams in the 90s and 2000s. They had the Albany Firebirds, which were extremely popular in this area for what they were. They were part of the original Arena Football League. And then in the 2000s, they had the Albany Conquest, who was in Arena Football 2. And what a weird, I mean, Drew, I know you and I went to a bunch of these games. Ryan, did you ever make it out to any of the Albany Firebirds or Conquest games?
I think I did Firebirds a little bit, but no Conquest.
Okay.
No Conquest.
The amount of money that you spent and the entertainment, it was awesome. We spent nothing at those games, especially for the Conquest. I remember like going to those things, going right to the ticket office. They're like, where do you want to sit? How close do you want to be? Give us $10 and you're there. We had favorite players. Shin. Shout out to my boy
Guard.
Shin. The Shin Guard, as we called ourselves. And they were just a lot of fun. So in 2019, because the original Arena or the AFL2 folded, the original Arena League kind of limped along. But in 2019, Albany, they got an expansion team for the Arena Football League. At the time, the Arena Football League, 6 teams, I think, including Albany. And that team was the Empire. That's what they came up with it. So in 2021, the Albany Empire, after 2 years in the league, won the championship. That was fantastic, right? And then the Arena Football League shut down, and the National Arena League reached out to the Empire and said, hey, do you want to join our league? The Empire won that league twice in a row. So 3 years running across 2 leagues, the Albany Empire was the champions. That's impressive. No matter how many teams are there or what talent level, that's very impressive. So they were we went to those games too. My wife had box seats. My wife's company had box seats at the Times Union Center where they played, and they were a lot of fun. It was just really entertaining. Everybody had a blast. And then Antonio Brown came in. So Antonio is the you guys like this? The longtime son of touchdown Eddie Brown,
Of course.
who was a Albany Firebird, quote unquote, legend, and also somebody my dad had a run in back in the 90s when he parked illegally, and my dad had to tow his car and get it out of there.
Ooh.
Yes, but we'll leave that for another one. And so, yes, Drew.
Just for context, Touchdown Eddie Brown was also voted at one point the greatest player in Arena Football League history.
Yes,
when the league had
wow.
like its 20-year anniversary or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Wow.
don't let me
A
interrupt.
huge legend for Arena. He was in their Hall of Fame when there was such a thing. Antonio Brown, not born in Albany, spent time in Albany because of his dad being here. You know, he would go to the practices and such. And so that's the connection. If anybody's listening and don't know why Antonio Brown bought this Arena League, it's because he has ties with it due to his father. So Antonio Brown made the announcement that he was going to buy the Albany Empire. And on paper, I mean, obviously, like, it's a lot of eyeballs on it. A lot of places were paying attention to the National Arena League that had never looked at it before. So they were probably thrilled early on. So I think to wrap this up, we got to go through the timeline here. So you can
It's
see
wild.
exactly
It's wild.
what happened here. So the purchase went down in March of 2023. Okay. That's when this happened, March 2023. Now, initially at that press conference, Antonio claimed that he had bought 100% of the Albany Empire. Turns out it was 45.7%. He did subsequently buy out his partners to get to 95%, but still never owned 100%. But did he ever own it? Because they asked him questions about that, and his publicist said, no, Antonio Brown does not own the Albany Empire. A foreign citizen named Antonio El Allah, who is not a U.S. citizen, owns the team on paper. So great job just exposing your tax fraud right out of the gate, Antonio.
Oh, my God.
Well done, buddy. Well done. So Brown, after his press conference, brought in his father to be the vice president of the Albany Empire, which in itself would have been fine. But he then decided to fire the very popular vice president, not give him another job, just fire him. And now Eddie Brown is the vice president. Okay. He also fired the head coach, Tom Menace. And Tom Menace, let's remember, 3 years in a row across 2 leagues, champion. Got rid of him. Don't need you. He hired Damon Ware, became the head coach on April 19th, 2023. Empire executives quit en masse the following day on April 20th. On May 1st, Damon Ware quits, claiming he hasn't been paid in 2 weeks. On May 2nd, owner Antonio released 8 players, including the reigning league MVP and 2 other captains who complained about not being paid in weeks. Fuck you guys. How dare you? Owner Antonio is blameless for this. On May 3rd, Tom Menace, the guy who was originally fired, was brought back.
He's back.
He's back, and they said in a news conference that they can't wait for Tom Menace to lead this team to multiple league championships over the next couple of years. The next day, Tom Menace quits. And then on May 22nd, the following day, Antonio hires Pete Porcelli.
My old high school football coach.
I was waiting for it. There it is. Ryan's old boy.
My old high school football coach who was
coaching
a bit of a mess even then. Back in the
coaching LaSalle, which is a local high school here in the Capital Region. He coached 1 game and then was promptly fired that same night. That was on May 27th. On June 2nd, Terry Foster, who is a former defensive coordinator for the Iowa Barnstormers of Kurt Warner fame, was hired as the next head coach of the Empire. Antonio, that same day, fired his friend, Ryan Larkin, who was also on staff. Don't know what he was doing, because he was bad representation of the brand after a local restaurant complained on Facebook that the team did not pay for food ordered delivered to the arena. So guy stiffed him on a bill to a local restaurant, and he fired that guy. 2 days later, Terry Foster quits, and current Empire player, and shockingly, former Kansas City Chief player Maurice Leggett becomes head coach. This guy was actively playing for the Empire They had nobody else
Bill
until he
Russell.
became
He's a
their
real
head
Bill
coach.
I was going
Russell.
to say, he's
That's
Bill
right.
Russell.
Now, during this entire turmoil, there's a lot going on, right? Antonio, forgive him if he forgets a couple things like paying bills, because Antonio Brown had not paid anything to the league to keep the team in the league. So the league, at this point, obviously, with everything going on, got sick and tired of this shit. And on June 15th, remember, this started in March. In June 15th, the National Arena League kicked the Albany Empire out of the league, ending their season and their existence prematurely. Now, Albany fans, for those who are out there, should not be upset because Albany is getting another arena team, this time with the Indoor Football League, should be starting in 2 years, according to an article I read. And let's just hope Antonio is distracted by something sparkly or powdery and stays far away from this incarnation. So, Antonio Brown, at least Antonio Brown for the Albany Empire, welcome to Football Fubar.
Is he going to be our first? Is he like the Ric Flair of this Hall of Fame? Like he's going to get in 4 different times.
I believe Drew referred to him as Ozzy.
Yeah, he's going to get inducted as both a member of Black Sabbath and as an individual artist. A few guys have done that. Paul McCartney. There's a bunch.
It's a long season, gentlemen.
Oh
So,
God! I have 2
you can
things
say goodbye to Antonio
for now. I have 2 things to say about this. Number one was I was there the day that he bought the team. I was at a Siena basketball game, senior night, and I just did not watch the basketball game. I just watched him move around that arena. Like, what is he going to do? He's going to do something. He's Antonio Brown. He's going to do something.
Pop that shirt off. Pop the shirt off.
And the other one is if you want like this, if you want to relive this or rewatch this, there's a guy named Urinating Tree on YouTube who did a very, very funny video recapping this. He does a lot of funny videos, but he did a hilarious video on this, just this part of Antonio Brown's career. So go check that out. All right. We have no game balls because there are no games, so we can't give any game balls out. Do we want to plug? You want to do a plug? You got a plug?
Do that plug of that other podcast that we do.
We have another podcast, the TGF podcast, and we are going to be recording this week episodes that involve a bomb, whether that be a ticking time bomb or any kind of bomb. The reason that this is happening is because there is an episode of Family Matters where a bomb is inserted into a treadmill and Carl has to run for his life because if he steps off, the bomb will explode on the treadmill and comedy will ensue because Carl doesn't like working out.
Yeah.
It's his worst nightmare. So it should be a doozy, a real doozy. So that'll be coming soon. You can check that out soon, probably maybe Monday.
Yeah,
that'll be out. So, and we'll be back on this show. The season's about to begin, so we're gonna get our regularly scheduled shows in very soon. I don't know if we'll be back next week or not, or if it'll be
we'll have to play it by ear.
Maybe after the first game. We're gonna figure that out, but we will be back every week recapping everything. And more Fubars, more Stripe Spiral, more fun to come. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.